So when you talk about like making a comic book and a message, what would you do as far as like what's important as far as creating a message to get out there to your fans? Like,
right.
Like how would you kind of reverse engineer that from a...
Well, it depends on the message, right? So it does depend on the book. It depends on what the qualities of the book are. And I think that so we need to be always thinking about how are we reaching a new audience, how are we reaching people maybe outside of comics. So we need to put some effort into that. But obviously the most efficient way is to start looking at how do we reach people who already love comics. And so that is the real skill and the real art within marketing is how do I take this item that is going to be the exact thing that somebody is going to just like give that one fan tingles up their spine. How do I find that fan and put it in their hands, right? Yeah. And how do I identify them out of the millions of fans that are out there? That's the goal. I don't, I know that we started late, so we don't have nearly as much time as we would have, and we still would not have enough time to get into dig into that. There are lots of ways that you reach them. Social media is great. The comics press is wonderful. They're all full of really passionate people who are doing their best to get those voices out there. Retailers are really amazing. There's now more distribution platforms than there ever have been for comics.
Absolutely.
And all of them come with their own challenges for communicating what is unique about this project, what is unique about this voice. And you just pull them apart. You gotta understand them in order to pull apart the problems. And looking at and then trying things and experimenting and then looking at the results of that experiment and figuring out what are the metrics of that experiment that I need to be watching and what are they telling me.
So do you do like A/B testing?
I do lots of A/B testing.
Because A/B testing is something I'm getting into now to see. So A/B testing, for those who don't know, is you take a test of a marketing campaign and you change a detail about it.
Right.
And you say, okay, test A is the original, and test B is the detail that you change. So for example, if you have certain text in the ad, you can change that text. Or if you have a certain image, you can change the background image or something like that.
Right.
And see which one performs better.
Right.
And if one of them performs better, you continue with that one, and you can also do another test down the line, another A/B test, and say, okay, well, this one worked better, or no, we found the right one, and you can keep playing with it forever to see which one really.
Absolutely, and that's just it. It is forever. I mean, I've given. So you asked me today about Prana. You asked me today about Comic Hub. I gave you the pitch on both of those, but I gave it to you in a way that was unique because it has been the culmination of all the other times I've given that pitch. All new comic book creators, I recommend they should work in conventions, right? They should set up a booth. They should sell their stuff. And the reason that they should do that is they need to pitch their book. If you pitch the same project 1,000 times, you are going to refine what gets people's eyebrows to shoot up, right? Anytime you see that, you're going to go, oh, that worked. Like any stand-up comedian. They're going to see, oh, that got laughs this time. It didn't get laughs that time. What was different about it? So we do that already.
We do, absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're running advertising campaigns, it's just good practice to constantly be refining and say, all right, I tried it this way with this group and this way with this group. This way worked. What is about this way worked? Okay, let's try that 2 different ways. Let's try that 5 different ways. Let's see which of those works. And let's try re-hitting those audiences. And you get a lot of opportunities with that, even with the same audience. Like you said, 18 impressions. 18 impressions, you could do something 18 different times. Tell them 18 different parts of the message. So long as they're seeing the brand and so long as they're interacting and hopefully learning more about it, they're going to be more interested in it.
Yeah, and people will buy things on the first impression if it's marketed in the right way, if they're able to actually get in touch with them and say, this is something that's for you.
Yeah.
You walk up to someone and say, this is the book you've been waiting for. They go, oh, I've been waiting for this book.
And if you could give me that email list of those people, I would pay you well.
Well, that's the key is we're working on that. We're all working on that. We're doing conventions. Even at conventions, I go there and I'm hand selling books, and I can tell that sometimes I'll talk to certain people about a book and they'll go, oh, not for me, I'm checked out. And sometimes I'll talk to certain people and they'll be like, how many volumes are that? Can I get all of them now?
Right.
And it's so interesting because it can be, variations on the pitch, it can be variations on the people, and it's stuff that you kind of have to refine as you go along and say, okay, this one worked, this one doesn't work. One of my great closing tools in comic book conventions is I go through my whole pitch. This is the story about a kid who grows up, loses his parents, and becomes Batman. And then they're like, oh, we've already heard that, we like Spider-Man, we're not interested in Batman.
Yeah.
And then, but if you go and you go, hey, listen, this is the story of Batman, and I'll sign it for you and everything, I'm the creator, and I've done that, they go, oh, you're the creator, okay, yeah, well, they feel a sense of closeness, and it kind of closes that sale, and you're able to go, okay, cool, now I understand, that's a selling ticket and something you practice and you get better at.
Right.
And if sometimes people go, oh, that's cool, no problem. You know that, it's worked in the past enough that you can continue it.
Yeah.
Or you can always experiment with something new. Would you like to buy that? Or are you interested in purchasing? And you can see sometimes people are like, no, it's too much of a hard sell.
Yeah.
But if you do, you can play with it and do variations and see what works.
Well, that's it too. You start, like I said, you watch people. You get to know them. What is their body language telling you? What is their, how are they responding to different words that you're saying? And you're always processing that. You're doing the A/B testing in your brain. You're making the decision tree. They said yes to this, let's move here. They said no to that, let's go back to here. Whatever it is. So, we're always doing that, and a lot of what bigger marketing is really doing that. But I love what you said about how you connect with them on a personal level, because it's something about comics that is very personal. It feels like a conversation. If you're reading a novel, you really are getting the words of the person who sat and wrote it. But on the other side of that spectrum, if you're watching a movie, you may feel like you're connecting personally to that actor, but that actor is just reading words that somebody else wrote and being directed by somebody else and was lit by somebody else who was, the sound was done by somebody else, and the makeup and the hair, and there was an army of people that you're interacting with. In comics, you're interacting with maybe 6 people.
Yep.
And that's if it has colors and letters and all of those things. But yeah, in many ways, and many times, some of the comics that I love, you're interacting with one person.
Yeah.
One person's labor of love. They put down every line, and they did every letter, and they colored themselves or whatever. That's where you start feeling that visceral connection.
And some of the most important things I've gotten in, some of the best moments I've had in comics are people who read my books, they'll pick it up, and unbeknownst to me, they'll find me in a convention and say, hey, your book changed my life. It was something that inspired me. Can you please sign it? And you'll get people who come up to you and go, hey, I loved your book, and you'll find these.
That's the juice that keeps you going, right?
Keeps you going.
Yeah, you could lose $10,000 on that trip, and so you got that guy, and I'm coming back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I'll get letters in the mail, and those people still do fan mail, like snail mail, they'll reach out to you and find your address and go on the company website and find your work address and go, hey, listen, that book changed my life. My sons read it and they loved it, and when's the next one? And I can't wait for this. I had a reaction to this character dying or this happening, and that's the stuff that kind of gets you going as a creator. So it's that stuff that if you can find those people, you'll be successful.
Yeah. Exactly. What was it? Ken Kelly calls your 1,000 true fans, right? You find those people that you connect with, and they will keep you. They will support you. They want your voice. They keep coming back because your voice is something that has value for them. And that is the juice that keeps us going,